Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a lot to talk about today. It's a normal scheduled show. We were going to plan to come on Sunday, 7 p.m. anyway, but...
Not emergency.
Not an emergency, but we have a lot to talk about. First off, USC finishes the season 8-4, not going to the Pac-12 championship. Utah took care of business, beating Colorado and... Not Utah, and Arizona last week. But we have a lot to talk about Clay Helton. There's some rumors happening. There was a report that came out, and then other people negated that report. We'll get into it. Also, we have polls. Ryan, you caused some trouble with that poll that you put out on Twitter.
I did a Twitter poll. We did a peristyle poll, so we'll talk about the results of those too.
Yeah, and then you can call us. Like I always say, free therapy. We already have a caller in the queue, 512-4TUNNEL. Call us, give us your thoughts, opinions, concerns. You can also tweet at us, #TunnelVision. I'll put your tweet up on the screen, and we will answer it. And, of course, wherever you're watching, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, you can put your comments, questions, concerns, and we will answer them.
We got like record Periscope people on right now.
Really? Hello, Periscope.
Hi, Periscope. What's up?
Ryan,
What's up,
don't ignore them this time.
I'm not. They're already commenting. I know.
Wow, well done. But, Ryan, you wanted to start off with the 8-4 record.
I thought you're the producer. I thought that's what you said.
I asked you. You're the boss man.
Just real quick, because
yes.
we if you saw our show Friday, hopefully you did. We had Colin Coward on. Wonderful of him on his day off to come in and kind of share his thoughts on the state of the USC program. But that was a cool. It was about maybe a little under 40 minutes. We didn't take a bunch of questions, but it was he said a lot of interesting things, giving his take. He called USC we. He's a fan. He's like people that maybe don't like his takes. He loves USC football, and he's as upset as anybody that they're not really nationally relevant right now. But we didn't know USC would for sure be out of the Pac-12 championship game. Utah took care of business, even though Colorado was a little feisty there for a while. But
come on,
early on there
in the beginning
for a quarter. Come on.
They were feisty in the beginning.
For a little bit. If they had an offense that could put together something.
7-0.
Yeah. But then Utah just sort of and they actually covered the spread, which was 28.5. So they beat the spread too, which kind of happened late in the game, but whatever. So now that, just officially USC is out of the Pac-12 championship game, no chance of winning 10 games this year. I know that's something that Clay Helton had talked about, maybe getting another chance at Oregon. That's not the case. So USC 8-4, after starting 3-3, winning 5 of the last 6, that's fine. But getting blown out by Oregon's not fine. The teams they beat in the last, 6 games weren't that great. They beat Cal. Looks way better now that they got Chase Garbers than what they were before. Jaden Daniels, USC didn't have to play against him. So there's some fortunate breaks potentially for USC. But 8-4, you are what your record is. That's what USC's record is. To me, going 13-11 over the last 2 seasons with the kind of talent USC has is inexcusable. That shouldn't have happened. But no Pac-12 championship game for USC.
Yep.
Utah with a chance to still get into the college football playoff.
Yes.
Which is why we don't really know USC's bowl destination yet. There still could be some movement there. Likely the Alamo or Holiday Bowl. There is a very, very, very slim chance they somehow jump Oregon and go to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, that seems very slim.
Like a 1% chance, but very slim. So there's still 3 potential bowl games. They won't drop below the Holiday Bowl just because there's no other teams with winning records.
You can so there's wiggle room for with the bowl selections if you're within 1 game. Well, there's only 3 teams in the Pac-12 that have winning conference records. USC's number 3, and they're more than 2 games ahead. So they can't drop below the Holiday Bowl. I'm thinking more Alamo because there's still a chance that both Utah and Oregon, even if Utah doesn't go to the playoff, they both get picked for New Year's Six bowls. So
Possibility.
I think then if that happens, then USC moves up to the Alamo. So I'm thinking the Alamo is the most likely at this juncture.
I think so, just because I think that Utah's going to get into the college football playoff.
They
so
could.
I think that's going to be.
We'll see Tuesday night when the rankings come out, but I think Oklahoma, they have they're going to be able to play Baylor in that, in that one. Oklahoma might be able to jump Utah. We'll see. People are saying about when Utah lost to USC, they were without Zach Moss, who's their, probably the best player on the team. So that's one of the narratives being, spewed by the college football playoff people. So that's something that could be considered. We'll see. Do they want to leave the Pac-12 out again? It did help that Alabama lost, so there's not that team that doesn't have to do anything. It's just sitting there. And you're like, well, it's still Alabama, and they're 11-1. And they just beat Auburn and all that stuff. You don't have to worry about that anymore, but you do have to worry about what's going to happen in the Big 12.
Yep. Anything else, Ryan, you want to add until we get to what people are tuning in for?
What do they want? What do they want?
Well, first off,
let's go right into it.
Let's dive into it. So,
Oh
report
my God,
came out.
we've got a whole bunch more of the periscopes. Wow,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I'm telling you, people want to know. So, there's a report came out today that Clay Helton was to be dismissed by USC. And so that came out, and then an hour later, you had some of the national guys, Pat Ford, Pete Thamel, Bruce Feldman, Dennis Dodd, come out and refute that report and said that basically that's not the case right now. If anything, USC hasn't made a decision, and if anything, they're leaning towards keeping Clay Helton. So we've heard a lot of things. I guess, Ryan, jump in first. What are you hearing, and what does it look like for Clay Helton right now?
Yeah, so we had Colin on the show. He had heard definitely that USC was leaning towards keeping Clay Helton. Bruce Feldman had reported that as well when this report came out earlier this morning. Not only was it refuted by Pat Forty and a bunch of the national guys, Pete Thamel, guys that we know, guys that we trust. I reached out to USC for a statement, and they just referred me to some of those tweets by Pat Forty and Pete Thamel specifically. That was strange, but whatever. I've had some contact with high members of the athletic department. They weren't going to give any kind of official statement, but they were sort of on the same line. I think there's still, a distinct possibility that Clay Helton's fired sometime soon. I think the initial report was premature. Even, and the funny thing is, Pat Forty works for the same organization as for Sports Illustrated. Well, whatever Sports Illustrated has become now, because they're part of some different organization. But so you have someone refuting. It's like Shotgun saying something's going to happen, and I'm refuting it. I'm like, according to USCFootball.com, whatever Shotgun said is crap. And so, yeah, I think it's premature at best. Inaccurate would be at worst. So, I think USC was definitely leaning towards keeping Clay Helton. That's why I think guys like Bruce and Colin and other people were reporting that, because that was kind of what was being, leaked out there, because that's the direction they were going. My guess is, and this is not, because talking to sources, that it was more of a trial balloon. And I've talked to some other national writers, and they kind of had the same theory where what would be the best thing for like a whole new administration coming in? It would be to wait and do something next year. But because of all the mistakes USC's had in the past, the blowback by waiting is going to be enormous. And the cost of it, John Wilner did a great piece on it this week. Shotgun talked about the cost of it before. And he broke it down to 3 different categories. But Wilner was basically saying it would cost a truckload to buy Clay Helton out, but it would cost a truckload and a half to keep Clay Helton. And I agree with that assessment. So I think that's the kind of direction that USC would have liked to have gone, is delay this. But I think there's a lot of pushback. We've heard from so many people, from the boosters. Part of the reason we did the poll, because we wanted to get an idea of what USC fans want. And usually it's like a split down the middle, right? Like some people like this, some people don't like this. This is not split down the middle anymore. This is almost unanimous. If you look at the Twitter poll, which I think is closing soon, now it's 82% say time for Clay to go, 18% say bring Clay back, and that, well, let me make sure that's
with almost 7,000 votes.
Almost 7,000 votes. The problem is, and we see this, and because I do the Pac-12 podcast, there's a lot of Pac-12 people on there, and it's almost unanimous. If you're not a USC fan, you are voting yes to bring Clay back. So UCLA fans were actually tweeting it out like, hey, go vote in this poll, so they try to bring Clay Helton back. Like, it's really, that's the most telling thing to me was that it's not just that USC fans don't want him back, but every enemy of USC wants him to come back. That's about as unanimous as it gets. On the peristyle, it's a little bit different. Looking at that poll,
which is more USC fan centric.
And I made this poll, and we haven't done a lot of these. This is only for subscribers, so you have to be a paying member to USCFootball.com, which all of you should be, by the way, if you're on here. And so there, that way you wouldn't have a lot of opposing fans. Now we do have. There's like Notre Dame fans and UCLA fans that subscribe to the site. They want to know what's going on. That's fine. But the majority are USC fans. So it's been up 20 hours or so.
Basically eliminated a variable by taking away just kind of the public, voting from fans of other teams and stuff for the most part. And the results are pretty telling.
It's pretty telling.
Yeah.
So we've had, at this point, how many people voted? 2,619 people say Clay has to go, and 128 say bring Clay back. So almost 3,000 or 2,700 votes, 2,800 votes, and it's over 95% say they want Clay to go.
Now, Ryan, you even reported that Mike Bohn wasn't even in the area at the time that this report came out, correct?
Yeah. So I got that from a high up member in the athletic department, and he was flying back into Los Angeles today. And I think Ryan Karji put that in his story too. So I just tweeted out, "Hey, I can confirm that." And we posted on the Peristyle that Mike. So if you were thinking, there's this secret meeting going on, and when the report came out, Clay Helton's fired. That wasn't the case. Mike Bohn was away on vacation for Chris, and I know other members of the athletic department were. One guy I know was in Mexico. Like people were on vacation, so it wasn't like there was some all hands meeting going on, and they made a decision to fire Clay. You saw which recruit was it that had
Joshua Jackson?
Joshua Jackson from Narbonne had an in-home visit with Keely Colbert and
Clay Helton.
So they're out there recruiting. So we're not saying that's not going to happen, but the decision hasn't. From our understanding, the decision hasn't been made. It certainly hasn't. If it was, it hasn't been conveyed to the coaching staff or people like that. So that's kind of where you are. Could it happen tomorrow? Could Clay? Yeah, I think it's that's certainly possible. But this was premature. And when you're talking about people's jobs, full disclosure, I was an engineer. I learned journalism like on the fly. Like I didn't go to journalism ethics classes and things like that, but I've learned a lot. I'm lucky enough to know. Big wigs in the journalism business that are on all sides of it. Tried to learn as much of all that. And when you're talking about reporting on someone being fired, it's not like, well, he's close to being fired. Like, he's got to be fired. Like, if you're going to say that, he's got to be fired. The same reporter said the same thing about defensive coordinator Clancy Pendergast last year, that he was fired. He was not fired. So I think when you're reporting on something like this, you better know. Like, it's not done. Not like it's likely going to be done or probably or whatever, because I think there was a really good chance Clancy Pendergast got fired last year, but he wasn't. And so you can't report that he is when he hasn't.
And kind of just looking at the situation as a whole, it may be something that happens. I mean, the report said that it may happen on Monday, and that may end up being the case.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and this may be the scenario where they just want to tell Clay to his face or tell the coaching staff to their face, and because everyone's out on Thanksgiving vacation, everyone's out with their families, they didn't want the report. So they may just be really mad about the report coming out. The report may hold to be true, and it may play out exactly that way tomorrow. But that is where they're getting upset potentially with it, is just that they didn't want the information to leak. Now, is it the journalist's fault for putting something out there if it proves to be true? No. That's your job. You're supposed to get out in front of the news, and if that's the news, then so be it. But you got to be 100% right on those type things. So these are the type of situations, just like you said, especially when it involves people's jobs and people's lives, families, and stuff like that. You want to make sure that you are 100% correct on that. So we'll see how it plays out. So when the report came out, I checked in with some staff members. They said they had heard nothing. It wasn't like they were being called to a meeting later, and they were worried about their future or anything. So checked in with them, just see, because it's a very it's a dicey situation. You don't just want to be like, hey, did you get fired? Type of thing. Like it's you got to toe the line a little bit. So you got to have a little bit of respect in the situation, regardless of how you feel someone is doing at their occupation. When you're trying to report on it, you have to then take a little caution as you go about it. So I checked with a couple people. They said that they had not been told anything. A couple of staff members. They were continuing recruiting, as you saw today. Kerry Colbert and Clay Helton out in home. I talked to Josh Jackson yesterday at an event. He's all for USC, regardless of the coaching staff. He's just kind of sitting back and waiting. He really likes all the coaching staff, especially Kerry Colbert. So he's kind of waiting and seeing how things play out. That's kind of how recruits are taking it, which is why I said last week that the sooner you can make an announcement one way or the other, the better.
Yes.
So waiting around till after a family holiday is not necessarily the best move if you know the answer already. Now, does that mean the answer was contingent on Utah losing or winning? That is a very hard pill for me to swallow, because I don't think that's the way you should operate and do business as a college football program that's supposed to be a blue blood. Well, we'll see how they do, and depending on what they do, then we'll decide our opinion. But things have continued as expected. There was a team meeting, and we're getting a lot of questions about the potential if there was a team meeting today. Yes, and we had heard that there was a team meeting. We, in our internal discussions as a staff, because we go back and forth when we hear things to see what each other are hearing, so we don't have something kind of similar to what Sports Illustrated is kind of going through, but to check and see. And it was like, oh, yes, there's a meeting, but it's been planned.
Yeah.
So it's not like this was an immediate emergency meeting or anything. This was a meeting that was planned because they didn't know the outcome of the Utah game, so they didn't know their schedule going forward. So they were planning to meet with the players and stuff on Sunday night, and this was already in the works for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, just because you didn't know exactly what the plan was going to be, whether they were going to go straight into Oregon prep and get to work really hard for a Pac-12 championship on Friday, or if they were going to be planning out, the next steps as far as bowl game and those type things. So yes, that meeting was already planned. That's part of the reason why we didn't make it a bigger thing than maybe some other people did. Announcing that there was a meeting. We had heard about it, but it just wasn't anything that was different than what was already planned. So it didn't really stand out in that regard, and that's kind of what we try to bring you guys. Is we try to bounce these ideas off each other first, instead of just throwing them out on the wall and seeing what sticks, and then trying to figure it out secondhand. So that's one that we had kind of discussed previously. We found out there was a meeting. I think Ryan put it on the board that they were having a meeting, but that it was just kind of business as usual.
Yeah. We just don't want anyone to come out thinking, oh, yeah, Mike Bowen, they're having some secret meeting and everyone's meeting. Like, no, he's not even in town. Or, oh, the team's having a meeting. This is where they're going to announce. It's like, no, this was already planned. So just, not that something couldn't be discussed during that or whatever, but that was not like, oh, they planned a meeting in the last minute. That was not the case.
Yeah. Now, Shotgun, you touched on this a little bit already, but I think some of the reaction that USC fans had when the national reporters pushed back on that report, when they said that there hasn't been a decision made, USC fans were mad that there hasn't really been, as far as the company line, that there hasn't been a decision made yet. What do you take away from the fact that they still, as of what is being publicly reported, haven't made a decision on Clay Helton's future? I
think that you should have already been able to make this decision, one way or the other last Monday. You should be able to put out an announcement then. The reason, or even last Sunday, the reason why you're seeing, Matt Luke and, there's openings at Arkansas, Missouri, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss,
there's plenty of them out there.
ASU fired a bunch of staff people. Texas fired a bunch of staff people. Yeah.
All those things have happened today because those teams finished yesterday. USC finished their regular season a week ago. Now, you don't know the status of the Pac-12 championship, but I think that if you're looking at the overarching goals of the program, and maybe that tells you a little bit about the overarching goals of the program, that this should be a national championship caliber program, then you don't wait to see whether or not you get into a Pac-12 tournament. A Pac-12 championship game. You go ahead and make an announcement one way or the other. Positive or negative. That way you give the coaches that extra week of recruiting and stuff, that extra week for, I think there was a little bit of a dead period or something. I don't know what the exact period we were in. Maybe it was a quiet period. But kids can always reach out to the coaches.
Yeah.
So then they can reach out and you can confirm, that and say, yeah, we're going to be here or whatever, and continue and have them, you can have your recruits, your commits, start spreading the word as well and continue to recruit, because that was one of the things that I talked with Josh Jackson about, and so I've talked with some other kids, recruits, is how do you go about, kind of recruiting for your class if there's going to be changes. I was talking with a UNLV commit, and it's, you try to sell what's going on at the program versus, the coaching staff. So that's part of it too. And if you can tell them, yes, we're going to be back, then that gives them that extra opportunity to go out and say, come on, guys, join us. Look at this recruiting class. We got spots available. We need to fill it with some big-time players. Look at what the offense is doing, type of thing. USC still has some big-time official visitors coming in the next month.
Yeah, this weekend coming up, there's official visitors. So
the quicker you could have made that announcement, I think the better, just because it gives your coaching staff more time, and it gives that stability that recruits are looking for. They're looking for stability and development. And if you can tell them, yeah, we're going to be here, that's a little bit of stability for them to latch onto.
Ryan, you mentioned that the Bruce Feldman report that the university was thinking about keeping Clay Helton was a trial balloon of some sort. Do you think that public opinion could sway this decision if it hasn't been made already?
Yeah.
How much do they put weight into that?
And that's my theory on what's going on. And I've talked to other national writers that kind of along the same lines, especially now if you feel like they might be leaning another way. I feel like it more was kind of a trial balloon. And does it matter? I think, the new administration, I mean, I've talked to people that work for them, and they're on our websites, they're reading the stuff. They know what the fans are saying. They see when you put a poll out like that, and they see the results. They see when they tweet something, when Mike Bohn tweets something about the basketball team winning a game, and every response to his tweet is about, you should fire Clay Helton. Like, it's not like, and then when they do an Instagram post that they don't allow comments on, because they know what the comments are going to be. So I think it's known. I think it's known out there. How much does it move the needle? I think that's hard to say with Mike Bohn, because, he's new to all this. I know previous, leaders in the administration, they really didn't care what the, lower end or whatever donors or fans were thinking. But I think you have that combined with the results of the poll are just, it's mind-boggling. We've never seen, you could ask everyone, do you like Pete Carroll? And I don't think you would get that kind of response compared to, or is Reggie Bush popular with USC? It would be more like 75-25. There's some people that don't like him. For everyone to be on one side like this, or the vast majority, is just something we just don't normally see. So I think you have that combined with, I think there's some pushback from donors. There's so much talk from fans about, if they do this, if he comes back, I'm pulling my season tickets. I'm not going to donate. And we've heard threats and stuff like that before. Well, I mean, I think people followed through this past year. I mean, it wasn't a very good attendance, even, at the USC-UCLA game, winning at that point 4 of your last 5. Fans could feel pretty good about getting some revenge on Cal and ASU and stuff. And they couldn't get people in the Coliseum. I mean, there was probably like 54,000 people in there. That's got to be discouraging. So people, I think, are following through, but it's even more so now. I think they gave USC somewhat of a pass, a lot of people, for last year bringing them back. But I think if they bring them back again, you're going to see some pretty poor numbers as far as attendance goes, interest, fan, all that stuff. And so I think it's a bigger deal, Keely. I think that's something they have to listen to and they have to take in consideration. That plus, if they're hearing from big boosters as well, they're like, "Hey, man, I'm out." And that's the big checks not coming in, along with all the smaller checks and the season ticket holders and stuff. But there's Cardinal and Gold people, there's committee people, there's people that buy that they want to sell those box seat, those the box seats ones, what are the club level seats, all that stuff. I mean, you're gonna have a hard time, and there's a lot of really good people that work in the athletic department, and they do their best to run cool programs like the 1923 Club and all this stuff. It's really hard sell. You're going to tie all their hands if you do this.
Yep. We had a question from Ty on YouTube, actually, who said, why didn't the university flat out refute the report? Shouldn't it speak for itself that they referred you to tweets?
Okay, that was weird. I've never been referred to tweets before. Yeah, I mean, I think they could have handled it differently. You could say, hey, there's no comment at the time. Clay Helton is still the head coach, and that's what we know. I mean, I don't know. It's strange the way that kind of came out. I think the LA Times reached out to one of the same people I did and sort of got some of the information about Mike Bohn not even being in town. But the official statement from USC was, a little strange. But I think there was some level of annoyance there too that they just even had to deal with it.
And if you're, why does I got a lot of questions today on Twitter and stuff. Why does Mike Bohn just not make an announcement and say he's staying if he is? Why? Why does he need to? If he has plans to make an announcement tomorrow or something, then why would he say, you know what? There's a report out. I gotta address this immediately. Because when you're in a position of power, you don't address every little thing that happens below you.
No. People bring us rumors all the time. I'm like, I'm not going to address every rumor you bring to me from, just made up stuff,
Yeah.
So I don't think he has to do that. But I think there's some credibility to what we're saying is like, this is the way they were leaning as a administration. They're getting some pushback, and now they're maybe leaning the other way, but they haven't come to some, grand conclusion yet. That sort of makes more sense that the way this is going down.
Well, Mike Bohn did say he was going to listen, learn, and lead. So, if he's looking at those tweets or he's listened to just kind of the uproar around everything, the news today and everything else around it, and the week that it's gone without making an announcement one way or the other, then I think you're hearing a lot. Now, what do you learn from that if you're Mike Bohn?
Yeah.
And what, again, I go back to what do the financials say, that tell you what you learn from that financial assessment that hopefully they sat down and went through to determine as well. Just like John Wilner put it out in a lot better terms than I said last week on the show, but very similar is what I was trying to convey is you got to look at the finances of keeping him versus getting rid of him and then paying another staff, whether it be a high-end staff or a mid-tier staff at the same time, and how that affects the boosters and all that type of stuff in there, just like you were saying. So I think that there's a lot of factors that are in this.
Yeah.
Has the decision been finalized? That's the hard part to say. You would like to think that was already done a week ago. But since there was no announcement a week ago, it makes it hard to believe that there was. And that there were, when you wait that week, it tells me that, one, you either are really looking at someone that's about to be fired for whatever reason, which you shouldn't be doing at USC, or you're looking at that outcome of that Utah game, and that's going to be a factor in the determination of it, which, again, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. But when you wait that extra week for no reason, really, it tells me that that's a factor in it. So now, if that is a factor, do you reconvene everybody and have a meeting on Monday morning since everyone was gone for the holidays, or have you already talked about, hey, if this happens versus this happens? That's where the kind of divide is for me. I don't know exactly where there is a standing, and again, we expect there to be an announcement. This should have been an announcement last week. This should be an announcement this week. You just need to do it for recruiting sake if you're keeping him.
Yeah.
As well. If you're going to get rid of him, then obviously it makes sense to you're going to make an announcement.
Yeah.
If you're keeping him, you need to do it for recruiting, though.
Yeah, because right now they're trying to tell recruits themselves, but if you have your AD backing you up, that goes a long way in that sense.
Same thing that Arizona did. Dave Hickey, I think is his name. That after the game said Kevin Sumlin's coming back.
Yeah.
You want to let those recruits know who's going to be the guy in charge, or else you're 2 weeks away, basically 2.5 weeks, something like that, before the initial sign day, 18 days. So you got to get on it.
Yeah.
Now, hypothetically speaking, what if Mike Bohn wants to make a move but doesn't feel like he has the coach in place to do so? So would it be all right in USC fans' minds if he's waiting a year to get the right guy in place rather than making a rash decision based on fans being mad and not maybe having the guy that you necessarily want? I
think at this point, even if you don't have the guy in place, excuse my cough drop, my throat's been killing me all day, which is going to be perfect for the show. I think if you don't have the guy in place, you're still going to win a lot of favor by cutting ties with the Clay Helton regime. I think that's a step that USC fans feel is far overdue. Now, there's a few out there that are saying, if you can't get Urban Meyer, why bother firing him? But I think the majority just want something new. Go in a different direction. Someone from the outside, someone that's got experience. So I feel like that's a win. If you don't have the guy in place, but you make a move, I think it's a win.
I think if you go through the process and you actually interview candidates and stuff and go through it, I think you would end up finding someone that you really liked rather than I don't think that even Mike Bones had time enough to say, to cross off everyone and say, no, this is not the guy, this is not the guy, this is not the guy. Whereas if you did make a move, you would have a little bit more time, even though you want to do it quickly. And which we've seen, Arkansas, there's, I don't know if you were following along, they were tracking the flights today, and it was, seeing who got off the plane when it got back to Arkansas, all those type of things. A little bit more difficult to do in LA, unfortunately, to track the tail numbers and stuff.
Who was that coach that was there? Was that, who got fired there at Arkansas? What was
Chad Morris?
Chad Morris. I think I was listening to like the 247, national, I think Cover 3 podcast. I think the story was that Chad Morris went to the AD and wanted a vote of confidence, and the AD was like, "Nah, we're not going to fire you, but I'm not going to give you a vote of confidence." And then kind of put something out there, and then kind of made the AD mad and sort of like forced his hand, like, "All right, well, let's just fire him," and like so he sort of like brought around his own demise, like something like that. So that's kind of interesting. But nothing like that. There's a lot of action going on around. It's just not at USC.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Which is, I think, part of the reason why people were so mad. Because if it was a silent day elsewhere, I think it would be less clamoring. But since there's so many moving parts at different places, I think it's kind of riled up the fan base as well.
Yeah, Tom Herman's like, dude, 7-5, not good enough. Making a bunch of changes, and everyone's like, wow, that's cool.
Cough drop.
I'm sorry. There's a Periscope.
Sure, but can I just bring up really quick?
Yeah.
Alan on Facebook brought up a good rebuttal to my point that the hypothetical I made about Mike Bone. If he comes back and puts support behind Clay Helton in a statement, if Clay Helton wants to get rid of coordinators or whatnot, who's going to really want to come to USC when it seems like Clay Helton's job is always in limbo? Can you really get the top coordinators that you want if you're back for another year and it's TBD?
And that Colin Cowherd talked about that the other day too, where I think last year was your chance to make all your big moves. Like, you can't do that 2 years in a row. You can't we made our big moves. Like, well, this year we're going to make the big moves. Like we're going to get rid of all. It's like, I think you already had your shot to do that. Like if you didn't do it last year, why would you?
The Notre Dame route.
Missed the window.
That wasn't full Notre Dame.
That was as close to being fired as he could probably get last year, and you still didn't make enough moves. I don't see. Yeah, I don't. Getting another opportunity, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yep. We have a full call queue. I don't know if you want to get to Periscope first, Ryan.
There's a lot of comments. There was one. I can't find it. I'm sorry. I want to give credit, but it was breaking news that Mike Trout was traded. That's what they said. Keely.
No, false.
Is that false? Is that
I would have gotten a tweet alert about it, so don't mess with me.
All right. So thank you for trolling whoever that was on Periscope.
Any good comments from Periscope, Ryan?
There's a lot of stuff going on here.
One possibility that could take place, it's going to be hard. The situation that Keely brought up, if you were to fire coordinators, is it kind of a dead man walking? Who wants to walk into that situation? Is someone who thinks that they can be the interim if there is a firing and then can take over. Yeah, and someone who maybe is not working. I don't know, like a Jack Del Rio as a defensive coordinator. Someone who's not currently that you're not buying away from somewhere else that may see it as an opportunity to get their foot in and work their way, since that's happened at USC. That could be a possibility. So, if you made that change, that's something you could potentially see. I mean, special teams coordinator is not the same. You're not going to, if there was a firing there, that's not usually a stepping stone to the interim head coach spot. But, maybe defensive coordinator, you find someone who's not currently, invested with another program or another team, and that's how you get someone that's still it can be a good defensive coordinator.
I just got another text from a good source that was like, what I've been told, Clay Helton's not been fired, but that there's another one in that bucket.
Now here's the thing: does this report put USC kind of in a corner? Can you refute it by tweets and then the next day be like, oh, you know what? Actually, that's what we're doing. Like, does this affect their decision timing at all?
I mean, that'd be interesting if it did. If you have like a vindictive administration where they like don't announce it or what, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think you can base your, if you were going to say they were coming that decision, that conclusion, and they're going to do it tomorrow, which would go along with what the report, potentially said. Would you delay it because of the report? I don't think so. I think you just have to do that. I mean, they'd probably make some kind of statement like, hey, man, we were talking about it. We came to a meeting and on Sunday night when I got in or Monday morning, and that's when we made the final decision. not before. They could refute it somewhere that way, but I don't think you want to delay it just because of some report like that.
I think there also could be that there is the old regime versus new regime sources, and it could be a divide there about who knows what, and there also could be the chance that it's unnamed sources, so they could just say no, nothing's happened here, and we're really mad about it. And then the next day, because their name's not officially on it, it's not like Mike Bohn put a statement out. It's not like the athletic department put a statement out. It's not a complete 180 to, if something does come out the next day, they could just be like, well, I didn't know personally.
Yeah.
So I think that there is still, plenty of room there. There's some cushion that could still happen.
And to your point, Chuck, and we got a question on YouTube from Tamatsud. Sorry if I said that wrong. He says, curious why there have been so many conflicting reports coming from sources inside USC over the last couple of months. Do you think inside sources are lying intentionally?
So
No.
there is that possibility.
I don't think so, but maybe.
It's
Whose sources?
It's much more intentional lying is much more. It happens much more like the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Like, reporters will get information from GMs and they're telling them about someone that they don't necessarily really like. Maybe it's a third or fourth choice for them because it gets out there and then someone else starts looking and they want to trade up. That's where there's more kind of on the line where there can be more movement, I guess, if that makes sense. It usually is not something just in this type of situation that happens unless it's agents trying to get better deals type of thing. That's a contract situation. Sometimes that happens. Someone's name's involved in a coaching search when it really isn't type of thing. Those are the times when things align. But usually on the school side, you don't usually have that.
Yeah.
I think that one of the possibilities, like I said, is that there is just a little bit of a divide between the old regime and the new regime, and maybe the information that's being delivered to everyone versus to a select few. And if that's the case, then some people may know some stuff that others don't. Is everything on DEFCON alert, or is everything sent through the email chain type of thing? It's a little bit different levels there that could separate who knows what.
Yeah, and I think you're giving a lot of the people there way too much credit if you think they're doing there's like some coordinated effort. Like, a lot of people want to believe that, like, oh, this has been this has been in the works for months, and all. It's like that's a lot of credit for where there's a lot of dysfunction going on. There's a reason that you had to bring in Mike Bohn when you did. I think he's going to do a good job, but he's coming in and, into a big mess. And there is an old guard and a new guard. There's a bunch of young people that work there that haven't felt like they've had any kind of power. And I think that's what they hope Mike Bohn could come in there and give people responsibilities where it's not just a few people at the top. But I also think right now that it's sort of just a few people at the top. Like, if you're not talking to Carroll Fuller, Mike Bohn, or like Rick Caruso, you probably don't know what's going on. Like, there's some. I don't think there's a lot of information disseminating down, and people are trying to figure it out. Those people that work in the athletic department will ask us questions about what's going on. And part of it is, as a reporter, like if you're a Bruce Feldman, it's not just like, okay, I know an athletic director or something. It's agents. You talk to different agents who represent different coaches. If someone's looking at a coach, well, some agent's going to get word of it. Like, you could go from that route. There's coaches you talk to. Like, talking to players usually doesn't help at all. Players' families, like we'll get people on the message board like, I'm really good friends with the players' family. Like, they usually don't know what's going on, Sometimes they do. Sometimes you get stuff, it depends on what it is. But as far as like administrative decisions, they don't always know what's going on. You need to talk to people that are high up in the administration, agents, things like that, and big boosters, the Rick Carusos of the world, the guys that develop the Grove and all that stuff. There's a lot of people. So if you're a really good reporter, those people have a lot of different sources. Sometimes it's just coming from one area. You need to kind of go all over the place. But I think right now, because of the power switch, the switching power that's going on, there's not a lot of information out there. And a lot of people that you normally might talk to get stuff, they're trying to figure it out themselves. So I just think there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. It's different than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, for sure. Now, something, since we're on this topic, to throw into the mix that we actually talked about on Friday's television with Colin Cowherd. Ryan, you and we have been hearing that there's some interest with Texas and Graham Harrell. That kind of throws a wrench into everything too. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, so I reached out to some of my Texas people, and I got like a maybe. I think there was two. I saw one of the reporters tweet that there was two candidates, but Graham Harrell was one of them. I mean, I think Tom Herman's going to be very aggressive down there. He's getting paid a lot of money, not to be 7-5. So I think you see what Graham Harrell was able to do, and he kind of proved the concept that you could take higher level athletes and still make it work. He definitely did that, and with 3 different quarterbacks, I think that the offense did a good job there. Did you see what the final numbers were? Was it a top 20 offense?
I think so.
I think that was my prediction, kind of coming in, going from like 96 to top. I think I said top 25, but they didn't quite get the 10 points better, but I think they got like 33 points or something. But yeah, that's another thing. Now Tom Herman, he might be on his way out. So like Graham Harrell could go from one head coach on the hot seat to another one. It's hard to say, but going back to Texas, there could be some attraction there. That's been one positive as far as this coaching staff goes. That could potentially be poached away. Like you're one, that one kind of gem on the USC coaching staff. Is anyone else going to be poached away? Hard to say, but doesn't seem like it. Graham Harrell, that's an opportunity. So I think that would be a pretty big blow. Losing Kingsbury last year was big, but you sort of had this tailor-made Kingsbury 2.0 or whatever, or Kingsbury Light. I'm not sure if there's another one out there that you could go and, hey, another air raid guy that you're going to bring in and it's going to work again.
Yeah. USC finished 19th in total offense in the nation.
From 96 last year. So that's a pretty big improvement. Now, ridiculous talent. Look at the wide receivers. They're insane. Keaton Slovis, though, played amazing for a true freshman that was a 3-star coming in. So I think a lot of that has to do with Graham Harrell. So losing him would be a big deal.
The number 5 passing offense in the country as well.
Pretty impressive.
Passing efficiency, top 15. There's several stats that are positive there for USC. They scored 33 points a game. I don't remember exactly what it was last year. 26?
26.1 or something. Yeah, they were tied with Oregon State. Yeah.
So that was top 40 in the country. So could have been a little bit better if they finished off some of those drives that they had. But definitely a marked improvement there. So if you can make marked improvements in other areas, maybe that's a selling point that Clay tries to make. Hey, look what I did here. The problem is, like you
should have done that.
Like we said multiple times, if you're going to say that we're going to do like Notre Dame, if you're going to address the statement that Lynn Swann made, then it should have been more. There should have been more turnover last year than there was. So, but Clay Helton, even a couple years ago after the Rose Bowl, what was his thing? We're so happy that we have the same staff. We have that consistency with our players. So he's wanted to keep the continuity as much as possible. When you're struggling, you can't necessarily do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule, that's a big thing for him. I read that today. Like he doesn't like a lot of staff turnover. Now, he's done an amazing job turning Baylor around from a win team to, in the discussion for a college football playoff. But he's not someone that likes to fire a bunch of guys. I think he fired one coordinator once. But that's interesting. There's different people have different philosophies. But if it's working, then, it's good to keep continuity. You could argue 2017, they won the Pac-12, but it wasn't working when you were getting blown out by Ohio State and Notre Dame and things like that.
How many coaches did Pete Carroll fire? Usually when you're doing really well, you don't have to fire coaches. They go to different jobs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Live callers, I have not forgotten about you. Just to be sure, keep a question, keep it quick, but let's go to our live callers. First up, I believe, is Kyle from Columbus. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, thanks, Keely. I was just calling I'm one of the few people who actually support Clay Helton because after this year, we have JT Daniels go down and then Keaton Slovis go down. Matt Fink is our starting quarterback against Washington. Looks terrible against them. And then we deserve Clay. It's not all on Clay Helton. I mean, there's so many other variables. Like BYU, Keaton's first road start. But what happens? Everyone blames it on Clay Helton. It's like if JT Daniels was the starting quarterback, we'd be 10-2 right now, playing for a Pac-12 championship, and nobody even think twice about it. But he always gets the blame, and I don't understand. It's not fair to him at all. I mean, and who do you want? James Franklin, who can't beat Ohio State? Urban's not coming there because Shelly Meyer doesn't want her husband to have. He's hurt every year. He has health problems. So what do you want to happen? Like, give Clay one more year. Healthy JT Daniels, we're on fire.
Kyle, thank you for the call.
Thanks for the call, Kyle.
Didn't keep it short.
Not a popular opinion.
Yeah.
Not one I agree with either. That Matt Fink guy did beat Utah, USC's best win of the year. To me, you just have to look at 13-11. USC for 2 years in a row had the number 4 roster according to 247 Sports Talent Composite, 4 in the country behind Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. And they lost 11 games with that. Now, everyone has injuries. We've seen true freshmen playing all over the place. Clemson won a national championship with a true freshman last year. There's a lot of excuses there. I think you can't, at this point, after 5 and 7, if you want to give Clay the benefit of the doubt for some weird things that happened this year. Someone tweeted me, or I think they said USC's 23 points away from being 11-1. Well, I looked it up. They're 24 points away from being 4-8. So you could look at it both ways. They beat ASU without Jaden Daniels. They beat Cal without Chase Garbers. It's like a huge difference. I mean, so yes, were they blowing all those other teams out and they just they ran into a bump in the road against BYU or Washington? Explain the Washington game. I mean, that's a 5-loss team that USC didn't look good against. So yes, I mean, I'm sorry, Kyle, but I can't agree with you there. The buck has to stop with Clay Helton. It's not a one-off. That we've seen this multiple times. Even when they were winning, the year they won the Rose Bowl, they got absolutely smashed by Alabama. We've seen this over and over and over. But USC has advantages, and you're going to win some games. But right now, he doesn't look like the guy that's going to take you to that next level.
They also lost to Oregon by a lot of points this season.
Yeah.
But
with everybody.
You can look at the BYU and Washington game and say, well, you haven't developed the offensive line, the run game enough to take away, forcing a young quarterback, inexperienced quarterback in both those situations to have to throw the ball a ton of times and throw those 3 interceptions. You haven't developed enough defenders to where Kanai Mauga played 106 snaps last week against UCLA. A linebacker played 106 total snaps. That's unheard of. USC, since I've been calculating it for 5 or 6 years now, I think there's been 2 guys that have gone over that, and one of them was Adoree Jackson, the other one was Jack Jones. I think that's the total that's going to. There's
two interception Jack Jones, by the way.
True. There's only been a handful of guys go over 100, like 3 or 4 guys, and now you have a linebacker going over. That tells me you're not developing guys enough behind them to put them in. And also in that game, Kanai Mauga started getting targeted. That's when UCLA's offense started rolling. When they started going after him repeatedly. There was one drive where they attacked him, I think 4 straight plays, and so. Why were you not able to switch the defense up? You have 3 what you call starting cornerbacks. Can you not move one of those guys inside to play an extra nickel back spot and have a dime package? Those type things that just aren't happening to mitigate some of those injuries. And also the injury issue is more than just, that's an excuse. It's a concern because it's become such a trend at USC, and that it all goes back to the top. It never starts with the low man on the totem pole. It all goes back to the head coach, and that's why he gets blamed for all the deficiencies that USC's had.
Yeah.
What were all those deficiencies, Lynn Swat said? There were a bunch of them.
Also, if you really want to get into it, USC had older quarterbacks that could have had more experience, could have been developed more, that weren't playing. That's why you had a true freshman in the 2018 season. That's why you leaned on Keaton Slovis in the 2019 season after he got injured. We could get into it, but I think everyone gets the point. But thank you, Kyle, for the call.
Thanks, Kyle.
It wasn't
He's
a question.
getting crushed on.
I know. People aren't really happy with your
in
call,
the comments, Kyle. Sorry,
know,
you are
sorry.
not a popular figure. But
True.
Trying to be nice, though. Trying to be nice.
Next up is Bobby from LA. Hello, Bobby. You're live on
Hi,
television.
guys. I have 3 quick points. Number 1, I want to apologize to Ryan for my long voicemail on Parastaff Podcast. I sincerely apologize.
It's okay.
No, thank you. Number 2 is I feel like I'm on death row. I want to use an analogy. Looking for clemency, I'm begging, pleading, and begging more for the governor or Mike Bone to get rid of Clay Helton. It couldn't happen fast enough. And I'm saying the death row analogy for the simple fact is that Ryan made a good point. There will be people who will lose for life being a Trojan. I'm a class of 88, and I consider myself a loss for life if Helton is not replaced. And third and final point I wanted to tell Shotgun, thanks, Marquette, for slapping me in the face and bringing me back to reality. Thanks, guys. You do a great job.
Thanks, Bobby. I was a little worried with the 3 points, but he went through them quick.
He's been quick. I told you, he's been quick.
Good job, Bobby. Yeah. Keely had your back, so that's good.
Yes, but we had a basketball point in there. Pendulum swing of first Kyle, keep Clay Helton, and Bobby death row. So
Bobby's like, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of people like that. They just like, you know what? And we talked about this with Colin Cowherd a little bit too. He was saying, what was the analogy he gave? Like if his daughter wants to go play like basketball in Colorado or something, like if she doesn't show a lot of interest in it, like why am I going to like bother going through this? Like she doesn't care about it. Why should I? And a lot of the fans are like, the way USC administration has been acting is like they don't care about winning. And a lot of fans we talk to feel like, okay, obviously, Shotgun, you're the athletic director. Your number one priority is winning national championships. Because I'm a fan, my number one priority is winning national championships. I know that's what yours is too. And what the your decisions or the administration's decisions have been, all these things that don't look like your priority is winning national championships. So
mine's to make money.
You want to make money, yeah.
Yeah, that's the AD. I'm just going to try to bring in as much money.
One and the same.
It can be.
Yes.
And if you're looking at it from that perspective, you know, winning will bring in money. You have to invest money to bring back money, and there is some risk. There always is some risk. You hire someone like Sark, you think he's going to be the guy to take you, and then off the field issues end up derailing that completely. You know, if you were to hire someone like Urban Meyer, and a year later he does have health issues, and you're suddenly back on the market, is that too much of a risk type? There are legitimate risks. But the blue blood programs bring in a ton of money when they invest money.
Yeah.
And if usually the AD, their job is to win championships and try to, but it's also to make sure that the budget is kept and all those type things that kind of get overlooked. You're remembered for your hires and fires, but you have to make sure that budget stays pretty even too, and make sure that you're bringing in money for the school rather than costing the school money. Or you get remembered as the AD who had to cut programs, and that's when you lose baseball programs and stuff at the schools like Xavier or wherever. So,
yeah, but I think the point there is that, yes, the fans could be turned off because if they feel like the administration doesn't care, why should I? I work hard for this money. Why should I invest it back into USC? Why should I donate? Why should I spend this extra money on the season tickets, which, my seats got moved and I got to pay a license and all this stuff and all these extra things. Why am I bothering to do that when if I felt like the administration was like working their ass off to bring a championship back to USC, then they can buy into it. But when they feel like the administration doesn't really care about that and just takes for granted the support that you're getting, that's why I think a lot of fans are turned off. So another year of Clay Helton is just another message to them that, look, winning isn't important to us. Clay's a stable guy. He's a nice guy. We're going to keep him around. And, to them, that's not the right answer. So I get it. Like Bobby, there's a lot of people like Bobby that are like, hey, I support all the time, but I'm not doing it anymore. You got to show me something. You have to show me that you really care. Now, you hired Carroll Fultz. You hired Mike Bone. Now go out and hire a really great coach, and then I'll buy back in. I think that's where USC kind of is right now.
Now, how much can you say, like, you can't, as a USC fan, can you really say you don't know what Bone wants? I mean, like, in the sense that, can you write off that the administration, quote unquote, doesn't care anymore? Because Mike Bone is still new. Can you really form an opinion on that? Or will you form it based on what he does right now?
I mean, I said all along, the most important decision he's going to make in his tenure is going to be coming in the first month of his tenure. And I don't think that's fair to him, but that's the situation he was brought into. Because of all the failures leading up to the hiring of Mike Bone, he was kind of thrust into a situation where normally you would like to take some time and kind of figure everything out and come to great conclusions and make long-term decisions, but you were thrown in the fire, and you have to act now with the signing periods coming up in 18 days or 17 days now.
Yeah,
you don't have time, so it's unfortunate, but this might be you're coming into the game and you can't warm up at all, and you're pinch hitting for someone that already has a 3-2 count, and you just have to hit the ball, and like you have a chance, and he has a chance to hit a home run, but he has a chance to strike out too. And I don't know how fair that is to Mike Bone, but I feel like that's a situation he's been thrust into because of all the past failures in the USC administration.
I completely agree with that sentiment, which we've argued previously. But I will say that it's similar. The coach is going to come in and have the same thing. So it's just part of the occupation that when you're hired, you're expected to come in and do work. I mean, it's the same thing with any job. Like, you don't get like a buffer like, hey, thanks we're hiring you. We're so excited. We want to send you on vacation for 2 weeks first. Like, that doesn't happen. It's come in and get to work. And so the new coach is going to come in, if there's a new coach, and have 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to potentially build a recruiting class. Like, you're being under the fire as well. And it's a different impact, obviously, the recruiting class versus a hire fire potential. But it's still something that is very, very important to your success and your programs underneath you, them having success as well. So I think that's just part of it. You got to be able to be ready to go, and that's something when you accept the job. That, hey, looking from the outside, when I came and interviewed, I looked and saw these certain programs aren't living up to the expectations the school has for them. These ones are doing really well. Let's see how we can get all of them up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a situation he was hired into. Yeah. You're like a CFO and you're going to some big accounting firm. And this one, everything's like running smoothly and they want you to take it over. And it's like, great. And this other one, you take it over. And, oh, by the way, there's a huge IRS audit tomorrow. You make sure you get up to speed on all our discretions of the last 10 years. You're like, okay, but that's kind of what, so you have to get to work in both places, but one is a little bit easier transition than another. Yeah. This is not an easy transition for him, but that's the job he took.
It came with the territory. We're reaching the top of the hour, so I'm going to run through some questions, rapid fire-ish. First up, BB3 on YouTube says, the real issue is what did the donors and fan base do if Clay's fired, but USC does not get Urban Meyer? Who besides Urban Meyer would calm the masses?
See, I think that's a very big question, and that's going back to my risk assessment and why I had them in 3 categories. If you don't get the big name, there's a middle category where there's still some apathy, and it's going to take winning people over again. And I think that's the same thing if Clay is retained. Now it's going to be much bigger. You're going to have a bigger leash in that middle column than if Clay's retained. I think he has to be like 10-0, but to win people back over next season. If you beat Alabama, that's a good start, which that's still looming over everything in the distance. Just kind of on the horizon. You're just like, there's a big A out there, and you're going, oh, yeah, that's still over there we got to deal with at the end of the day.
No, I agree with you. That's the you come back next year, it doesn't get easier. You're playing Alabama to start. Now, they look a little more beatable than what they have before, but who knows? They might come back really upset next year and take out their aggressions on USC. We'll see what they do. But, yeah, it's a tough spot, whoever comes in.
Which goes back to your whole theory about you come in to do work. A hard transition. If there's a new coach, it's a hard transition as well.
Yeah.
Jasper Smith said, would it be more shocking this year rather than last year if Helton comes back for another year?
Ooh.
That's a very good question.
I love that question, Jasper.
Jasper Smith.
I mean, I was shocked last year, but I think I'd be more shocked this year.
I was more shocked last year.
I think last year, just because 5-7 is, I've said it many times, is a fireable offense at USC. Yeah. 8-4, not necessarily. Now 8-4 coming off of 5-7, that's where the issue lies. Yeah.
But to bring in Mike Bohn the way you did, like kind of forcing Lynn Swann out that quickly, you're like, did you bring him in to keep Clay? Like you could have had Lynn Swann been around, I don't know.
But I think that also speaks to Lynn Swann issues as well, not just Clay Helton solely.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see. I'm trying to go through all these.
We have a lot of comments on, but we haven't. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. If you have a question on Periscope, get in there.
I'm parsing through all the comments.
It's like really, there's a lot going on.
55P Malone on YouTube says, "Is this not weighing on the players as well?" And the question I had to build off of that is, when there started to be an uprising for fire Clay Helton, you saw a lot of the players come out and publicly support him. Do you think that the SID office has kind of told everyone to just stay silent on the whole matter, or that they're just trying to stay out of it this time around?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, we saw Gavin Morris, who was been on this show before, tweet something along the lines of reporters just making up stuff now. So he was out there kind of disputing it, but we haven't seen a lot of players really say much. I don't know. I'm not sure if it came. Do you think it would come from the SID? I'm not sure at this point.
I mean,
they
they
would
get
say.
media training from that office, and that's what I'm alluding to.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe I didn't notice, but I just didn't notice like players saying a whole lot at this point.
We actually had a commenter on Facebook too say that, and I don't know if they're an insider or whatever, but they said that the players were told specifically in the 5:30 meeting not to say anything about the meeting. So who knows?
Yeah.
But even before that, when all the rumors started coming out early in the day, you could have seen guys, take to social media to defend or, make some quizzical, emojis or something that might lead people to jump to conclusions, but didn't really see anything. So maybe there might have been a directive kind of given pre-hand, like, hey, let's just stay away from social media for a little bit, guys. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of noise out there. I'll let you know when something is, is official type of thing. But yeah, there wasn't much, so that's a little bit surprising. It's a good point to point that out. Now, how does this weigh on the players? They're all sitting there going, because there's guys that are sitting there going, either he goes or I go. There's some
people
players
that want to transfer out.
I have been told that.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's players that are in that boat. There's players that are starters and go, oh man, am I going to lose my spot? There's a lot of standing for players and just kind of an uneasiness, not knowing what's going to happen and what their future may hold. So that's kind of how that plays out. In college, I had a coaching change my junior to senior year, and you're just kind of waiting it out and going, is this going to happen or not? Like, how is this going to affect me?
You kind of know your role,
forward?
and then you don't know your role anymore. And some people are like, I had a bad role and I don't deserve it, so I want a new coach to come in.
Yeah.
And I think whenever you see that circling the wagon stuff, like if everyone's told, like, hey, don't say anything about this meeting, or when, like, hey, we're not, you guys can't come to practice anymore, the media, you guys are shut out of practice out of the first 20 minutes. Usually that's not a great sign when there's sort of like this, let's keep it all internal, like stop with the outside influences. It's because they know they're making wrong decisions and they don't want people to know about them. So it's not usually a good sign when you start seeing people doing that.
Sports Talk with Troy said, from the perspective of a potential coaching hire, how does firing Helton after an 8-4 season look?
I think
completely validated.
Yeah, I think that if you're a coach in the business, you understand that it's not just about this one season.
Yeah.
No. And it's USC. Like, this isn't, hey, a few breaks here and there, and we would have won the Pac-12 South. Like, that's not USC. That's the bar is too low for you. Like, USC has so many advantages. They should be playing in the college football playoff. They haven't sniffed it. I mean, you have to get a lot closer to that. You've had over 4 years of this. You had a great Rose Bowl win. And that's nice, but that's it. Like, it's not going in the right direction. You can't just be this close. You need, like, look what Ohio State's doing to the teams they're playing. They're absolutely pummeling them.
Yeah.
Pummeling Michigan, a really good defense and putting up 50-something points on them. USC's got to be doing that more, and not a game or two a year against the bottom dwellers of the Pac-12. You got to do that consistently. You have better players than all those guys. So you have to be able to do that a lot more. So to me, that's just what the issue is. It's not, hey, USC's 8-4. That's fine if you're Oregon State or Cal. You're USC, so it's not fine.
Yeah. Portland West on YouTube says, who said that they were going to be like ND, Notre Dame, Swan, Helton, or both? So Lynn Swan, in his official statement, it was coming off of USC playing Notre Dame. And so he referenced Notre Dame and Brian Kelly indirectly in his statement. And then I believe that Clay Helton has also said it in his pressers towards the end of 2018 as well. So the answer is both. But basically they wanted to rebuild and that they were able to do great things after rebuilding, and that was how it was framed when he came back.
So they had all said that. I'm looking at the YouTube questions right now. It's like the Matrix. What the heck is going on? There's all kinds of stuff going on here. You guys, so many comments coming in from everybody. They're fired up about this. I love this.
I'm trying to get as many questions in the doc for Keely to read.
He's helping me out. I'm also just trying to see if there's anyone's coming in too.
Which is why I'm never looking up at you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we have like a thing where you can put the graphics up there, but stuff goes by so quickly. I don't think
it's not. Yeah, even on Facebook, and usually Facebook's a little bit slower. Facebook's coming in hot. So thank you guys for your interaction and for all your comments. Trying to get to them as we can. And speaking of which, Mark says, Keely, is the Family Feud podcast on hiatus now that the regular season is over, or will there be a pod this week? Mr. Gunn, shotgun.
To be determined.
We'll see. We'll see what happens this week. How about
we'll
that?
see
There
what
could be
happens.
some breaking news this week, so who knows?
Yeah, we'll see how the week develops. How about that?
We also got a lot of comments saying that a hot coffee could help your throat, Ryan. Has there been a coffee maker?
Oh my God! So if you guys know this, like Colin likes to give me crap. He knows that I like. He said I ate dessert for like candy bars for breakfast, which is not true, but I do love candy
Also
bars.
pretty accurate if you know
Okay,
you.
whatever. But that's fine. He's giving me crap. I've been drinking. I drink tea. My mom drank tea. I've had some tea before I came over. I need more of that. But someone on my Instagram offered to send us. He's going to send us a coffee maker. For
Wow.
yeah. So I got to get the name, but
I got a lot of tweets
Thanks,
of
shut up.
Amazon links to coffee makers, and I'm like, Colin, messing up my
but you
mentions.
guys both drink coffee, right? Or do you? No, you
Caffeine.
don't. Yeah.
We both don't drink caffeine or coffee, but we like caffeine. Anyway, back to questions. Just a momentary detour. RG on YouTube says, is it possible that the decision to fire Clay Helton has already been made and that the possibility of Utah losing was the only reason for the delay? Maybe Mike Bone wanted to keep Clay for the title game, then fire.
I mean,
It's a possibility.
yeah. I don't know if the decision's been like that. Just seems to be. I don't think it's. I think they would, like I said before. I think they would rather not have to do that right now. But I think it's a necessity. So I think it would have been easier to bring Clay back if they won the Pac-12 South. So I think that's part of the reason why they didn't make a decision or announce anything before that. Now that you know you didn't win the Pac-12 South, it gives you a little ammunition for the other side too. So if you get a lot of pushback, which I think they have, now you're like, well, you finished second in the Pac-12 South and you really should have won it. So there you go. I don't know. You won every Pac-12 South game. You didn't win the South. It's the first time that's ever happened, which is crazy.
P. Luke on YouTube says, if Helton is fired, would there be another job out there for him? My answer would be no, and that's why he should be fired.
Okay, he's going to get a job. It's not like he's not going to work, but
He wouldn't have to if he doesn't want to.
no, he could retire in style. But what kind of job would he get? There's like UNLV rumors or something going on. Like
That's one of the names that's been his name has been brought up with the UNLV job, which is interesting because he's still currently employed somewhere else, which tells you a lot about the current situation that USC is in. But that type of place, a mid-tier, mid-major, yeah, I definitely could see him getting another head coaching job. Now, he could also go a different route. When coaches get fired from Power 5 conferences, there's usually two routes. You can go back to a mid-major, which is usually not the way you want to go about it. It happens occasionally. Usually you go become a coordinator, you work your way back up and take over another job again. Or you become a coordinator, you go the Lane Kiffin route, coordinator, head coach at FAU, and maybe you get hired at an Arkansas or Missouri or one of those jobs that's open right now. Those type of things are usually the two tracks that it follows rather than jumping straight to an FAU and then trying to work your way back up.
Yeah, he's not going to get hired at a Power 5 for a head coaching job. So that's not going to happen. It will be more of a Group of 5 kind of situation. If
That very
if at all.
rarely happens. However, Steve Sarkisian.
True.
Yeah.
Facebook, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to sift through all the comments and trying to find questions. So bear with me there. Matt Parker said, do you all think that the administration cared or had any opinion on the fact that Marcus Allen was at the LSU game and didn't come to USC this year?
I mean, it's just sort of to see John Robinson and Marcus Allen there. Yeah, that's just sort of like, this is where it's at. I don't know if that had much to do with it, but that's not what you want to see. Your former coach going for an undefeated season, or completing an undefeated regular season and playing for the SEC championship game, basically in a lock to make the playoff, even if they lose the championship game. So yeah, that's not exactly what you want to see. People are still, I'm sorry, Michael trolling. I say Periscope needs some love. Periscope is still coming up with Kyle jokes. Like they're still making comments about our first caller.
Oh, poor Kyle.
They are not happy about it.
Hey, everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Kyle had a veggie turkey for Thanksgiving. Kyle drives a Prius. There's a lot of
Be nice
stuff
to
like
Kyle,
that.
right? You don't have to say what they're saying.
Oh, sorry. I don't know.
Our buddy John on Facebook says, do you guys think Bone has been actively interviewing head coaching candidates and simply hasn't found his guy yet and will retain Helton for that reason?
No, I don't think that's happening right now. I think they have to take care of what's going on first. Now, I think there's probably talks going on, but I don't think they're actively interviewing. If they're interviewing people, I think there's leaks would be happening because there's a lot of people involved with stuff
the
like
variables,
that.
yeah.
I don't think that's where it's happening, where once you have to go through official processes, like you hear things about, well, we had to order his laptop or whatever it is, like when people are getting hired. There's a lot of that stuff going on. So more people have to be involved. Right now, I don't think there's those more people involved.
The background checks and all that type of stuff that have to take place so you don't end up with George O'Leary, was it?
Was it George O'Leary?
That lied about his resume and lost the Notre Dame game?
Yeah. The Notre Dame job.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into it. There is often a lot of back channel conversations, I will say. So you know the agents and stuff of the top the top agents of college football coaches, and it's just a conversation, just chatting like, hey, would this be an interest to your guy type of thing? If it was, would this money work out for? But those are all conversations. And then you get down to the negotiating, and you sit down, and it can be a lengthy process of going back and forth on certain details. Those type things. And when those happen, that's when word usually gets out, and that there's very few, underground bunkers in LA where you can just go in complete silence. No one sees anyone, even, Arash runs into Cliff Kingsbury in LA, that
True.
type of thing last year. So that's the way it happens.
It happens.
Larry on Facebook had an issue with us now bringing up offensive stats and complimenting Graham Harrell. He thinks that we weren't complimentary of him in the first half of the season, and then the second half of the season was easier, so of course USC would do better offensively. And he said that we kept mentioning penalties all year, but not offensive stats.
Well, the penalties were terrible all year, so we've still mentioned them. We probably should have mentioned it more in this conversation, but that's one of the reasons why people are anti-Helton, because the two things he said he wanted to clean up were what? Penalties and turnovers.
Yeah.
The reason why we were more harsh on the offense in the first half of the season is because of that second thing, not just the penalties, the turnovers. The turnovers are what killed USC in the first half of the season. Now you played a little bit lesser schedule, but you also took better care of the ball in the second half of the season, and the defense started getting some turnovers as well to help you win the margin. I mean, what was the first game that they finally won the turnover margin? Was it Colorado? Was it Arizona?
It was, one of those. I can't remember which one. Yeah.
It was like 18 games. So that's why, even if the offense is putting up some stats, if you turn the ball over 3 times, what happens? You don't score points. So therefore, you don't get the credit.
Yeah. No, I think we talked about the offense being better. It just looked better. It looked more defined. They ran into some problems, like losing JT Daniels in the first game, losing some running backs. But it was just a better offensive system, and you're going to show better numbers. If, but you got, I don't know what to say, you got lucky, but Keaton Slovis probably played better than anyone, could have expected. So you got to like that. Matt Fink won you a game as the third-string quarterback, beating Utah. So there was some, I think there was some optimism there as far as the offense goes. It was just a much better system, a much more quarterback-friendly system, and I think people knew it.
I think also the offense improved as the season progressed. Not just Keaton Slovis got better with his reads and stuff. Reads are sacred. That's what they always say. Graham Harrell and John David Baker and Keaton and the quarterbacks. But also just the offense as a whole, I think, figured out what it wanted to be, rather than kind of being – it was a little bit of a hodgepodge to begin with, where they wanted to be air raid, but they also still wanted to have power runs and stuff in it, and it took a little bit of time. And the running back injuries and stuff kind of opened up the playbook a little bit, and they started doing a little bit more stuff, which I think helped the offense as a whole.
We have a question from Quentin on Facebook who said, Ryan, do you still feel like hiring an AD with no connection to USC was a good idea? If he was connected to USC, then maybe he'd have more urgency to have us back at the top of college football.
No, still a good idea. Look, don't go back, dude. You don't want to go back. I mean, who do you want to hire? Marcus Allen is your next athletic director? Matt Leinart? No, you don't. You need to get someone that's an actual AD. You just brought them into a really tough situation, right at the end, like we talked about. So, yeah, no, I would not changing my mind on that. You had to go outside. You just had to.
All right, let's go back to our callers in the queue. Hello, you're live on Tunnelvision.
Hey.
Hi.
Guess who?
Dan.
Dan Weber.
I was like, when he said hi, I was like, wait
What's
a minute.
up, Dan? Dan, you called my cell phone during the live
He
show.
called me too. Dan, you're live on air. Just FYI.
I wanted you to take a look at the text message. We do have some early reports about the meeting tonight.
Okay.
Interesting. Do we really want
10 minutes tops. We understand that Clay conducted the meeting. He told them that he hasn't been told anything about what's going to happen.
Okay.
But he assured them that it will all be it will all finish up this week. They'll know everything in terms of how this is going to go by the end of the week. Don't know if they discussed like a practice schedule, anything like that. It didn't sound like it. And I do understand one media person showed up and was roundly criticized by USC's media boss and virtually thrown out of the building.
Whoa.
In a very unfriendly way. Like, you are not supposed to be here. What are you doing here? Get the out of here. So
Wow.
Just another. But basically, a 10-minute meeting, very quick, no final results. But Clay said we haven't been told anything yet, so I don't know.
Interesting, Dan. I know Keely's nervous as hell.
We don't know a whole lot more than we knew before the meeting, apparently.
Interesting.
And I don't. They've got 4 weeks to get ready for the bowl game. I'm guessing either holiday or either they're going to play the 27th or the 30th. So, if you're going to have 15 practices, you kind of got to have an idea of where this is going fairly quickly. You might have to do something this week. I don't know. So we don't know if they got through that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the last coaching transition was for the Holiday Bowl with Wisconsin, right? And there just wasn't that many practices. That's where Clay got rid of a bunch of people and stuff at the end of the season. So that bowl didn't turn out so well. You would want more of a plan in place and make sure that everyone gets the allotted practices getting ready for the game.
Yeah.
Although then you've got the Las Vegas Bowl example, where I think they took that's when Clay ascended to the interim throne after Ed left, and they took just, I think, 6 of the 15 allowed practices and showed up and played great. So although that was the team that didn't have very many players, and so they may have really needed the rest, and they just had better athletes than Fresno had. But so Clay's kind of got a couple of different examples of how to do this in sort of a similar situation, or we don't know how similar it's going to be, but only USC, when you start thinking back, could have 2 recent bowl games where the head coach at the end of the season wasn't the guy coaching them in the bowl game.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's USC for you.
Yep. Well, thank you, Dan. If people don't know, that was Dan Weber, our beat reporter and columnist for the site. What's really interesting is our screener hasn't responded to me, so I was going into the blind on that call, and then I was like, it's Dan. So all over the place. But thank you, Dan, for the call. To make sure it's not a Peristyle podcast, I'm going to hang up on you, Dan. I'm sorry. But let's go to our next caller in the queue. Actually, Ryan, do you want to discuss that a little bit since he had some news?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, it was like we said, it was a pre-planned meeting. Didn't think anything was coming out of it, but sounds like, the coaching staff, they were out recruiting today. That would make sense that they haven't been told anything like, hey, you're not coming back. If you were told you're not coming back, you probably wouldn't be out recruiting today. Probably wouldn't be hosting a meeting tonight. So if something happens, it'll probably be sometime this week. But I don't think, like we said before, it's happened yet.
Yep. Alrighty, and people are saying this is not the first time. We actually have had a Tunnel Vision with Dan on it before, so this is not his first appearance.
Right, but it's the first time we've had like a random staff member call into the show.
I know. We should have been like, and
like
now,
not planned,
that was not planned. We should have been like, and now we go live to Dan on location. Right. But no, okay, let's
Dan with the report from the meeting.
Yeah. Alrighty, let's go to our next caller in the queue. Maybe it's Chris Trevino. Just kidding. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey.
Oh, no.
It's not Chris Trevino. I don't have that much personality. It's Pete the Poet from Pacific Palisades.
Hello.
This week's poem. Hello. Hi, Keely, Eure. This week's poem is entitled, It's Tough to Kill the Devil. Okay. It's tough to kill the devil. Help us, damn it, grab a shovel. When Hiroshima was bombed, only cockroaches survived. It's tough to kill the devil, especially with God on his side. The boss is in Ohio. That lady is out of town. So the devil keeps recruiting as recruits away to hell. It's tough to kill the devil because he's such a nice guy. He's no Dan Weber, the gentleman who asked him to resign, because this devil is so selfish.
Pete,
Tough to kill the devil.
Pete, thank you. I'm
This
going
is
to cut
Pete.
you off now. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I
that
think
was-
maybe go see your therapist extra time this week.
Yeah, Pete, last time your poem was a little bit more lighthearted. It was about turf.
This was darker.
Yeah, this is very dark, Pete. Maybe refine the poetry, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait till our intern comes back and is screening the calls. Anyway, Shotgun, some rapid fire questions. Help me, please. Please help.
Oh, where does this season's receiving corps just completely changing the
Sure.
the tone of the show? Where does
Sure.
this year's receiving corps rank all time in USC history that you can remember?
So, I mean, recent history, we've seen a lot of great duos. We've never seen this deep. Now, you could go back to some of the Pete Carroll stuff, but even then, like, you weren't featuring 3 or 4 different guys like you're seeing now. And I think there was guys on the roster, but to have this many guys at one time playing at the high level, I mean, nothing that I remember that's been anything like this. Like, this is pretty unique.
When's the last time that USC had 4 receivers have 100 yards?
In a game, that's never happened.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I think it's happened 4 times in like recent college football history. Like it's happened once or something this decade or this century, and then I think a couple other times in the 1900s or whatever.
Now, would I like to have seen a little bit more usage of depth this season? Yes, but also by the end of the season, you basically only had one guy as a reserve. I mean, the last game, I think John Jackson was the only scholarship wide receiver that was a backup.
Wow.
You know, because Velus Jones was out. You know, Kyle Ford was out with the back strain the
Muneer
previous
McClain.
week. So Muneer McClain, Brew McCoy. You know, so a lot of the guys that were there, you know, ended up on the shelf for the end of the season. So would like to see a little bit more depth, and maybe that's something that gets incorporated a little bit more as the, you know, if the air raid continues at USC. But you know, this year's group was fantastic, and they made a ton of plays for USC. So I think that's a part of the reason why the offense really took off is the receivers were really, really good.
We got a Periscope one from Yak Nolan. Why doesn't USC fire, I think he means Clay Helton, and hire an interim coach? Year-long search for the right guy. So he's saying get rid of Clay Helton now and just have someone kind of take over temporarily, like Graham Harrell or something like that. I mean, I think that's a possibility. Like
That would be thinking outside the box. I don't know that that's been done. You know, it doesn't pop to memory that that's happened anywhere.
it would have worked out well with Ed Orgeron, but you had like this strong personality. The problem is, who do you bring in? Because it's not like there's great members of the staff that could take over this team right now.
But I'm just saying, just in general, like that. The only thing I can think of that comes anywhere close is Barry Alvarez taking over the team for a bowl game. You know, moving from the AD to taking back over as the head coach at Wisconsin. But really an interim for a full year, because I think that you basically doom a recruiting class.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
who wants to come in like, yeah, I'm going to be your interim coach,
It's
but I'm going to
basically-
be gone by the time you sign. Yeah, come sign with
Yeah.
us. Like, I don't. That doesn't make any sense.
It's like what the Angels unintentionally did with Brad Osmus, and they were like, "Oh, Joe Madden, just kidding, bye." Kind of like that. But
Except there's no recruiting class.
yes, I was about to say it's different when it's baseball and college football. Shotgun. We had a tweet from M. King who says, "Why is everyone so high on James Franklin as a possible replacement for Clay Helton? He's the only quote unquote big name to lose to Helton."
Yeah, but I mean, that was a weird situation, and he did an amazing job at Vanderbilt, winning like 9 or 10 games.
Twice. He won 9 games twice at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I mean,
What has anyone else ever did at Vanderbilt?
he's done really good things at Penn State. I mean, they won some big games. Is he, but Penn State's like, what, the 3rd best program in the Big Ten? Like, what would he do at the best program? What was he, if he was Ohio State's head coach, what would he be doing? That's basically what you have at USC. He's probably a top 5 coach in college football right now. And to see what USC's hired in the past, James Franklin would be infinitely better than anything USC's done in the past as far as proven college coaches go. So, I mean, maybe you're going to nitpick and say, well, I don't know, compare him to Urban Meyer, but who else would you compare him to that he wouldn't be better than? I mean, I think, you could get some younger up-and-coming guys that maybe have a higher ceiling, but he's a proven winner. He's done it, the fact that you could win at Vanderbilt in the SEC is pretty crazy. So at USC, you just have to project. I think he could do some good things.
It's the same reason why Matt Campbell remains a hot name, even though their record is not great this season. It's, wow, you're winning at Iowa State when no one's been able to do that. And the teams that they've beaten in the past couple of years, no Iowa State team had ever beaten Texas and Oklahoma and, Kansas State and all those teams. So I think that's part of it. What you've done at a lower place often will play up higher. Now, James Franklin has done a good job at Penn State. He's not done a great job.
Yeah, fair.
And you could probably say the same about Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. He's done a good job, not a great job.
I think Franklin's done better than Harbaugh.
And
yeah.
that was going to be my point, that you would say that Franklin's done a better job there. It's hard to say that there's many coaches that you would put in front of him, just in the pecking order of top 10 coaches in the country.
He's probably top 5,
He's I would say top
close.
10. I mean, you got Kirby Smart, Dabo, Nick Saban, Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, because those guys have basically been in the college football playoff every other year, every year kind of thing. And then there's a next group after that, I think. And you put Ryan Day in there because he hasn't proven anything completely yet, but they've done really good. Some guys like Chris Peterson and whatnot. There's some other names in there as well, but James Franklin's got to be right up there, right? He's a consistent winner, and that's something that USC, that's part of the issue at USC right now, is it's not a consistently winning program.
We have a Facebook question from Dustin, who is not talking about the coaching search at all. He wants to know what's the running backs situation going to look like next year. Unless anyone goes, you're going to have Vi Malapai, Stephen Carr, Marquise Stepp, Keenan Kirsten back. He said that the running game was one-dimensional. That's because they were injured. That's why you had Keenan Kirsten, who they wanted to redshirt initially, get touches and not actually burn his red shirt because so many guys were injured. But,
I think the big loss is Stepp, just not having him there. He brought a different type of. He just brought something different to the table, and you could, bring him as a different kind of back. I think he changed the game for USC when he was, and fans loved him, and for a good reason.
And he really improved as his season progressed. It was unfortunate that he got hurt when he did, because he was really making some really nice strides week by week in that. And Keenan Kirsten, we saw him make some strides as well, maybe not to the extent of what Marquise Stepp did. But the other thing is Stepp can pick up the blitzers and stuff, and that's an area where he's still growing. But that was the biggest thing when Stephen Carr and Vi Malapai came back, is that it opened up the pass game a little bit more too, because one, both those guys can catch the ball, and two, they can pick up blitzes when you want to leave them in and give your guys more opportunities. So I think that there will be some growth in the running game if it's the same offense. Just the fact that they will be in the second year, they kind of know what they want to do with those. Because remember, Mike Jinks said the first time I talked to him in the spring, he said, "I've never had a back over 205 pounds." And he's been running the air raid basically his entire, coaching career.
Yeah.
So, it was different for them, and they had to figure out, that was part of the maturation of the offense, I think, was the coaches figuring out how to use all the pieces that they had. Are we going to rotate in 18 receivers, or we got Michael Pittman, why are we taking him out?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have an interesting question from Alan on Facebook. He says, I know we joke that the rest of the Pac-12 wants Clay Helton to stay, but isn't the entire conference better off with USC in the limelight? Can the other teams really claim that they've taken advantage of USC's incompetence? No,
it's an amazing point. I was actually texting with John Wilner about, his story and stuff, and I liked it. And, he said 100%. There's a lot of fans, that, Pac-12 fans that want to see Clay Helton return because they don't want to see USC be good. But we both agreed that shouldn't be what they want. They should want, to make USC, if USC's down, it makes the whole Pac-12 almost irrelevant. You have to go do amazing things, and it's really hard to be good without USC being good. And it's sort of like USC is the tide that rises to raise up the rest of the boats of the Pac-12. So you're exactly right, but fans aren't going to think of it that way. I think the SEC knows, hey man, when Alabama's kicking ass, it helps the whole conference. Everyone's talking about the SEC. Then you get tired of Alabama winning for a while, but you can't expect USC to be down all the time. There's no LSU and Georgia and Florida pick up the slack for USC if they're down like you have in the SEC. So you need, as a Pac-12, you just need USC to be good. And when they're not good, it just hurts the whole conference.
I was kind of wondering in my head while you were answering the question, I wonder how much the SEC is kind of lifted by Alabama being good with Nick Saban has been there, because the SEC has been the dominant conference for 15 years now, 20 years. Probably around the time that Saban got there, maybe a little bit before. And like now, teams were winning national championships. Tennessee with T. Martin and things like that. And it was an occasion, but it wasn't like the SEC is the place to be. It was a debate. Or the Big Ten's really good. The Big 12's doing really well. USC's out there. But then when Saban got to Alabama, it feels like the entire conference, and it's partly because of all the resources that he demands. And then it starts an arms race around, you get the strength coaches that are getting $600,000 or whatever a year, and it just elevates everything around because you're forced to match that or just fall behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's been different about USC is when Pete Carroll was here, they were dominating with fewer things than other places. So, other places, Washington State didn't feel like, hey, we got to go out and we have to spend as much money as USC because USC wasn't spending a ton of money. So it's kind of interesting that maybe because USC hasn't been big spenders on a lot of different things, that maybe that has hurt the rest of the Pac-12 because they haven't tried to keep up.
Good point.
We have reached the 8:30
Yeah,
mark.
we should probably wrap it up.
Ryan, I can tell when you're losing steam a little
I'm
bit.
losing steam. Sorry.
Any Periscope love that you would love to share?
This is from Berger, I think. FYI, only 4 teams have won more games than Penn State over the last 4 years. So, yeah, I mean they're winning a lot of games. So that's why people think highly of James Franklin.
Yep. Shotgun, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, Brett said, can any of the recruiting be salvaged at all? I think that, yes, to an extent. You're not going to go from 76 to number 4 or anything in the country. But once there is a decision made and announced, you're going to see recruits that have been sitting around and waiting. Some of the guys that are officially visiting next week have told me, I'm just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. I've got my visit scheduled. I asked one of the kids, what do you kind of want to get out of the official visit? He's like, well... He's just kind of like, I don't really know yet because he wants to wait.
The head coach is going to be.
He wants to wait and find out.
Yeah.
And then if the head coach is the same, then it's a different discussion than if it's a new head coach. Obviously, if there's a new head coach, you want to find out, hey, do you like me? Yeah. How do you want to use me? Is there a new offense? All those type things. So I think it's going to change, and there will be some commitments and stuff in the next 2.5 weeks, but it all starts with that announcement, which is why I said it should have been last week.
Yeah.
Where would I put Austin Jackson in this year's draft? Ulau asked. I think that he is second to third round. Now, Colin was very high on him.
Yeah, he thought he'd be the second tackle picked, which is kind
of. And maybe that's partly the class. I haven't really studied the entire class to look at the other tackles and stuff. I think that if he comes back, he could be a top 15 pick. He's got that much talent. He needs another year of seasoning to put it on tape and show it rather than it just being potential. He's got a ton of potential, which is why he still could be, the second tackle taken overall because there's a ton of potential there. So it's all about teams seeing that. Mark want to know, should Bone be allowed to hire a new coach next year if he decides to go down the questionable path of bringing back Clay and Clay struggles again, or should his fate be tied to Clay?
No, I don't think he's going to.
In what sense?
Yeah.
You
didn't hire him
basically
for a
was
year.
Lynn Swan.
So you're basically saying if you think he screws this up and brings him back, that he should be gone and not be able to hire the next guy. I don't think so. I mean, you got to make these more long-term hires, but I think it would hurt his tenure if he does bring him back, and that's it's gonna as far as the power he has a lot of favor right now, but if he brings him back, I think a lot of that goes away. So that's probably going to hurt him, going forward if he does bring him back, but. He would still be allowed to make the next hire.
Shotgun, you were doing illegal rapid fire. It was not sanctioned.
Wow, sorry.
Unsanctioned rapid fire.
Bad.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. I'm sorry. We had a full call queue, but without our screener, I was just not going to do that. Too risky. So sorry for the callers. Call in next time when we have our scriner back.
We had record numbers of people watching.
I know.
This
Thank
show.
you all for watching the show.
Amazing. Thank you.
If you're watching on replay, I'm not sure if we're going to put this on podcast. We'll see. Might have just sealed our fate there. But any final thoughts before we wrap it up? We might be back soon, depending on what happens.
We could have an emergency tunnel vision this week. Just go to uscfootball.com. You follow us on Twitter, wherever you want to do. We'll whatever we're hearing, we'll put it out there, especially on the Peristyle.
Yeah, that's where
it's a great place to be. uscfootball.com. Just check out the message board. It's buzzing.
And tomorrow is Cyber Monday. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, we might have a deal.
So
if you want to check it out,
stay tuned. I know some people were asking. uscfootball.com. That's where you can get the scoop.
Yeah, go to uscfootball.com.
Trek wanted you guys to know, breaking news, Brian Kelly is still on the field.
Nice.
That was 6 games ago. 6
Let's
games
end
ago.
on a lighthearted note, though.
Sure.
I like it.
Sure.
Thanks, man.
Expect some developments in the next 2 days. I'll just say that.
Okay. That's your gut, Shotgun.
Yeah, no, expect some developments.
All right.
Okay.
Check it out.
Can't wait for the P thread that's like, what does Shotgun know? But that's going to wrap it up. I already asked for final thoughts.
No
We're
more
gonna
final
wrap it
thoughts.
up. No more final thoughts. We've talked enough. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. We'll be back at some point, so make sure you stay tuned. But we'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.